don't know the direction they followed for the development of this record doesn't necessarily speaking represents the actual sound of the band. Hello there, girls and boys, welcome back to the channel. First and foremost, I can't believe that we haven't analyzed anything by Scorpions, and Scorpions happens to be one of my favorite bands ever. The track in question is Blackout from the album, of course, Blackout as well, and it's one of the best tracks, in my opinion, that the Scorpions ever delivered. Not because it's the biggest in scope or the more advantageous or more daring composition that he ever created, but it's because it's a great way to get into their music and their sound, at least the hard rock era. So if that's your jam and you want to analyze the track with me, let's do it together. But before we go, if this is your first time on the channel, I welcome you because in here we analyze the music that we love from the perspective of an active musician and professional music producer, using language that everybody can understand in a way to expand our knowledge when it comes to music production and songwriting. So if this is your jam, let's rock and roll. Here we go. So here we go, girls and boys. Blackout by Scorpions. So cool, right? This is such a blast from the past. This song was the first song that I listened to by Scorpions, believe it or not. And it totally blew me away the first time I listened to it. One of the things that I like the most about this track is how kind of frozen in time it feels. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing, because the production values of the track are super early 80s sounding. Everything about it is screaming that era in rock music. From the reverby sounding guitar, and reverb is an effect that we use when producing music to recreate the sound of a particular space. And it sounds like this, reverb, okay? And in this case, it's been used on the guitars quite a lot. And I wonder if during the recording process for the track, they actually just tracked the guitars in a big room. And a big room tends to have a much more prevalent reverb sound. And maybe the guitars were that freaking loud, because I can imagine that this was loud when they recorded this. So they got plenty of the reverb coming out of the room itself, because it sounds quite natural to me. It doesn't feel artificial in any way, but I might be wrong. If you happen to know more details of the production of this album, please let me know. Now, another thing that I want to point out, it's how cool is the use for the dual guitars. This band is renowned for having two guitars, and they are not playing the same thing the whole time. And it's good. It's actually cool because it shows you a high level of orchestration for rock music. It's very, very well crafted. One of the reasons why I like them so much. And I didn't remember it being this way, being frank. It's been a while since I listened to this track and this album for that matter, even though I love it. Maybe it's because I've been, sometimes we spend time, we have these phases in which we spend more time with certain bands than others. And Scorpions used to be one of my daily drivers, actually. And I still love them. I simply stray away from them for a while. But such a great track. Now, The thing about the guitars is that once I play the track back again, I will show you the stereo field analyzer, which is a device that looks similar to what you're seeing right now on your screen, and it's going to show you how certain elements of the mix are louder and represented on each of the sides of the stereo spectrum. What does that mean? Stereo spectrum stands for the sound, the division of the sound between the two speakers that you're using right now to listen to my voice and to analyze the music with me. When you're mixing music, you have the capability of pushing sound to one or the other extreme and everything in between both, thus known as the phantom center. Now, it's important because you're gonna see how different the two guitars parts are to each other, and you will notice immediately when both of them are playing the same together. It gives an illusion of wider, it increases the width, it's widening the sound of the guitars, but when both of them are playing together. And that's a common technique when producing music. Most of the guitars that we have heard in many rock records have been doubled, tripled, quadrupled, depending on the record you're analyzing. And in this case, they didn't go that route. They actually have both of them together, and one of them is playing wherever he has to play during the live show, and the other guy is playing what he has to do. And please remind me the name of the guitar players for this particular iteration of the band. And the thing is that once the song comes back, pay attention to that detail, because there will be points on which the guitar feels fuller, and others you will feel that something happened, but in a good way, because one guitar is playing something else, particularly this side. Okay, here we go. So cool, right? The ending is fantastic. I love it because it actually, well, it's basically the cover art for the album. Love it. Now, girls and boys, did you manage to catch what I was trying to tell you? The whole thing with the guitars playing different parts of certain sections and then joining together to create a much more thicker and much more louder wall of sound. That's super cool. And it's something that is no longer that common because modern music production, it's already forcing you, if you want to be competitive, of course, to create music that is super highly polished sounding, if that makes sense to you. Why is that? Well, because people are now used to expect a certain sound out of a particular record, or of a record coming from a particular genre. And in the case of rock music, since it's heavily driven by guitars, the guitar sound has to be massive and very, very prominent in the mix. And in this case, we got a mix that, even though the guitar sounds badass, I love the tone of those guys. It's not as big as, for example, a record by Metallica, let's say the Black Album, a massive sounding record. And in that way, you feel the guitars to be a little bit fuller and bigger, larger, for lack of a better term. And that record, it's objectively speaking a better sounding record than this. But does it deliver a very emotional response, which is what matters in the end? That's a question that every single one of us have to answer to themselves. Now, speaking of mixes, let's take a look at the screen because we're going to be taking a look now from a much more analytical perspective to the sound of the track. These girls and boys in front of us is Decibel, which is the tool that we use to analyze music through the use of a visual medium. And in here, we get the first section, which is the frequency range analyzer, which is displaying to us the loudness of each of the frequencies that corresponds the human hearing range and how loud each of them were while the track was playing. And as I stated at the beginning of this video, we can see that this is not a loud record by any means. I love that because it gives us a much more bigger differences between the dynamic range. More on that later. But you can tell that this is a record from that era. And as usual, I try to point out that the low range first, the low end, because in here you can see that we don't have a huge, prominent, stupidly loud low end. It's actually kind of even sounding. The entire thing is quite semi-flat, which it's product of its time. Usually when we have analyzed records from earlier records, such as this one, we all tend to discover that the frequency range is not as pop in any region in particular. You have the normal heights or hype up bass, but that's because it's through the low end that we create, when mixing music, we add the sense of cohesiveness and also the punch of the track. It adds a little bit of this ballsy aspect to music, and it's normally pushed a little bit because it sounds more pleasant to our ears. The thing is that in modern records you have a stupidly loud low end, such as the ones that I am showing you right now on your screen, and you can tell the difference is staggering. Now, when it comes to the mid-range, not surprising at all, because the mid-range is where most of the meat and potatoes is going to be found on any form of song. And these being so driven by guitar, not surprising, the guitars are super loud. And I think they are louder than the drums. And that's something that I, not necessarily speaking, happen to be such a fan when it comes to the sound of the record, because I like my drums to be a little bit more face fronting, a little bit, not louder, but more punchier sounding, because that's how I imagine rock and roll. And having seen these guys live, and when they play the song, damn it, they go metal, man. They go super, super powerful and loud. And coming back to the record, I was kind of surprised because it feels a little bit tamer when compared to the live versions. Please tell me if you happen to have seen them live and if you agree with what I just said, because I think it's quite clear what I mean. But coming back to the mix analysis. High end, nothing surprising. Again, it's not necessarily brittle sounding. It's quite well defined. It's not abrasive by any means, and actually, it doesn't feel dull as well. By dull, I mean when you remove some of the high end. For example, right now I am removing the high end of my voice, and you can see that it feels and it sounds a little bit more muffled. That's because on high end is where we find the definition, the clarity, and a little bit of the attack of certain sibilances and certain sounds. In musical terms, that means that, for example, our cymbals, our certain sections of our guitar sound, even the kick drum itself could lose some of the definition that makes up for the sound of it, right? And in this case, we are not dealing with a muffled sound by any means. We would have seen something similar to what happened to my voice. Now, let's take a look at the sound and the dynamic range, because this is the second analyzer, and this guy is showing us how loud the track has been throughout time. Remember when I told you that this song is not that loud? This is where it shines. And the reason why I mentioned that is because when we're dealing with volume, perceived loudness on a record, depending on how loud it is, we're going to understand it to be to have a different, it will have a different effect on us, emotionally speaking. For example, when something is quieter, we tend to react to it as if it was more intimate, a little bit closer to you, a little bit more personal, sexier if you wish, mysterious and dangerous and dark. But when it's louder, it's much more exciting. It tends to have a more energetic feel to it, and all around we enjoy loud stuff, being very frank. And usually people try to push them. Well, there was even a period of time known as the loudest war, but I'm not gonna delve into that rabbit hole. But this record being from the dark age of technology, we can tell that the dynamic range is. I was expecting something more important, girls and boys, because it's kind of flat. You see that the song, once it ramps up, it sticks to the same cruise mode, if you wish. The intensity of the loudness is preserved, no major changes, but it makes sense because the song is quite hard hitting. It's very exciting. It's always pedal to the metal, and that's basically the first half, including the chorus. And you can see that the chorus is not as loud as I would like it to be, because sometimes you can use not sometimes, every time that you're mixing music, you can use the board, the faders. I have them in front of me right now, and you use them to push certain sections of the track to feel a bit louder. And if done intelligently and with care, you can actually create a much more intense and much more, how can I put it, emotional section. And having good control over the dynamics allows for a much more better experience, listening experience. That's why when you listen to classical music, sometimes the records go super quiet and then they ramp up in volume like it's going out of fashion. Because by doing so, they can create this emotional impact that should happen in particular points of the song. But in this case, it's quite static. But good news is that the song is short enough for it not to become a problem. Let's take a look at the second half of the track, and you see that very little difference. We only see a little bit of a ramp up during the guitar solo, which, by the way, is amazing, don't you think? It's so well crafted, it's super fun, and also rock and roll is that's the kind of guitar sound that comes to my mind wherever I look at my own electric guitar, for real, because it's so quintessential rock music. Oof. Please tell me the name of the guy who's playing the guitar in this one, because damn. But coming back to the analysis, you can see that the song never ramps up until we got the crescendo in volume. That was the ending, the special effect, when I was pointing at the cover of the album. So there we have it. What do you think? This song, it's great. It's simply a great composition. The thing is that now that I listen to it after a good while of not listening to the studio version, it feels a little bit tamer in comparison to the fantastic experience that is listening to this one live. Please tell me what you think about it, because Scorpions, I think, is a band that delivers way more live than they do in studio. There are some bands, for example, Iron Maiden comes to mind as well, that they are way better live than they are in the studio, for many reasons. And in this case, I think the direction they followed for the development of this record doesn't necessarily speaking represents the actual sound of the band. But that's my opinion, and please let me know what do you think about it. So, if you like to support this kind of content and you like to support this channel, the best way to do it is by listening to our music on Apple Music or Spotify, and also by following us on social media such as Instagram and X, because that's the best way for you to get in touch with us in a much more personal basis. Now, girls and boys, as every single time that I meet you, I gotta remind you that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember that I'll see you when I see you.